Hello and welcome to my Module 3 reflection video. To start off this module, we had talked about the demographic transition model. This video, I felt like it kind of helped in illustrating the more like central, naive, or ignorant, maybe preconceived view that many, particularly those in developed countries, have when taking a broader kind of worldview. And I feel like me, like alongside others, may have incorrectly answered that first set of or pairing of questions. We look at it at a quick glance, and I kind of also felt that like many fail to realize that different countries are at different stages on the demographic transition model, as it's kind of difficult for some people to kind of comprehend or think of a lifestyle outside of doors. So I thought that kind of idea was pretty interesting that I talked about. The second video was a demographic transition model and the epidemiological transition model. Something that interests me was the similarity in the model patterns, but the difference in explanation. And I feel like this idea and concept has kind of been talked about throughout the different materials and past modules that we have kind of gone through, with the concentric or Burgess model being of the same nature and like concept but sharing different names, or like the Hoyt and multiple nuclei and galactic as versions of different population expansion models, but all were kind of based off a different development at the time, whether it was trains, streetcars, automobiles, or highways. The next article was how will society change as the next video was how will society change as the U.S. population ages. Within this video, it kind of talks on the different reasons that Americans are living longer. And one point the note was the talk on how we the importance on where you kind of live and where you grow up, and how your zip code can have as big of an impact on mortality and morbidity as any traditional thing that we would think of, such as smoking or obesity. And it kind of poses the idea of decisions of like the current population involving like reproduction and its like kind of complex nature, with the idea of that like it's kind of seen throughout world and history in which reproduction was necessary to fuel labor in families, but those families are thus in more disadvantaged situations, so the children that they're going to have are born into disadvantage. And then it's kind of in comparison to those in more successful situations, kind of don't feel a need to reproduce. And although if they were to, would their children be placed in a better or more advantageous scenario than the other ones? The next article was America's college towns go from boom to bust. I thought this was really interesting. It kind of talks on the impacts of dying universities in like non-flagship college towns, with Western Illinois being the main example. And it kind of talks on the struggle of local businesses and their stories on like the slow decline from the success that was once the flourishing from the baby boom. And I kind of talked on the success of flagship universities like Michigan, Ann Arbor, Tennessee, Florida, and the impacts that towns like this, and then also Blacksburg, and the success that those towns kind of see. But I also maybe think of the negative impacts that towns such as those kind of experience, especially here in Blacksburg, with like the success of the town. I feel like a lot of residents are being priced out of their homes, and they're just being pushed out due to incoming students increasing exponentially. And then additionally, like kind of that small town feel that you have in Blacksburg is slowly being erased by like student nightlife. For chapter 12, the fear in the city and landscapes of fear, a section talked about London and its like noise concerns at the time, which was interesting. And it kind of talked and said even streets of private houses did not escape from such sales tactics. They were invaded by a never-ending procession of hawkers who shouted their services and goods. It reminded me of the article that we have read last module, with the chapter being the Lost Metropolis, from the Sphinx in the City and Urban Life and the Control and Disorder of Women, which this one kind of talked on the development of British towns and cities post-World War II and the implementation of these neighborhoods and the focus on the creation of communities, but ultimately turned out with a separation of the businessmen and the woman, and how there was kind of a lack of transportation, just kind of a disconnect. So I think it was interesting how it had talked about this like chaos and like inability to escape that bustling downtown, and how it has changed so much over time. In chapter 2, where is the future in future all that matters, it kind of talks, it states that the current party in power continues on its merry way and fashion changes as it always does. But barring a wild card, a surprising event with significant and radical consequences, nothing much changes. This is the near future, which basically is an extended present. The future is stable with discernible trends and can be known. Most reliable forecasts concentrate on this very nature in the title of this in his domain of the predictive future. So this prompted me to think of the very nature and title of this course, which is the future of cities. And kind of hearing about this, does it kind of mean that the unforeseeable future in which we seek to explain but has yet to, or does this course kind of more focus on the predictive future in which we can model moments in what our future might look like, basing it kind of solely off of what we know is possible and is effective today? And this also touches on the section of this course and its content that I really loved, but I never expected, which kind of focuses on thinking and theories and models and ideas, which are all important to our cities, but are not necessarily directly, concretely concerned. The next video was the AI summary of George Simmel's essay. Kind of talked about metropolitan intellectuality, which was interesting. The AI had talked about not there being an IQ difference, but rather a difference in function regarding input, and it prompted me to think about the difference in brain development or focus based on our upbringing. It kind of makes you wonder, do those in calmer areas have more creative or open or empty brains, and are those who are raised in cities kind of cold-hearted and technical because they're so focused on getting through the excess of stimulation? And then the next video, City Life versus Country Life. It touches on a similar idea talked about in the prior video, but the idea of Amazon Prime and online shopping as a way for non-city dwellers to access resources interests me, as I feel like with modern technology and its expansion today, people within these cities are still utilizing these sites and services, and it kind of prompted me to think of the difference between rural and urban users on websites such as Amazon. Next was the suburbanization in the U.S. after 1945, the section talking about the FHA and their manipulation of home buying, and the action of kind of making buying over renting more practical interests me because I hadn't heard about it. And then the section that also talked about how retailers like Macy and different stores were aided by federal tax policies. It's just that section also, which talked about government incentivization and kind of prompts us to think of the potential manipulation or incentivization that could be performed to reduce housing and rent costs that are a big issue today. The next was housing and segregation and redlining in America. It kind of talks on the segregation and redlining, particularly in modern and current effect that we can see today, which made me wonder how this is prioritized in modern city building. I feel like many, when thinking of city building, look to optimize the construction and economy, but often fail to look back and assess the issues that may plague the area, such as environmental racism and redlining and food deserts, and kind of take a more future view instead of taking a current or past view. The next video, White Flight, connects with the prior video, which I talked about on governmental manipulation of housing markets and eventually segregation, and prompted to think about if anybody within these stories was actually genuinely motivated by genuine interest of moving or fear of property value, as opposed to the main concern and motivation, which was racism. The Modular Man and Future Shock. In this, the quote says, "Pretty soon," says Professor Eli Ginsberg of Columbia University, "we're all going to be metropolitan-type people in this country without ties or commitments and longtime friends and neighbors." In a brilliant paper on friendships in the future, psychologist Courtney Tall suggests that stability based on close relationships with few people will be ineffective due to the high mobility, wide interest range, and varying capacity for adaptation and change found among the members of a highly automated society. And this quote kind of made me think of, or made me wonder, does a metropolitan and fast-paced city life cause citizens to ignore or avoid making relationships with neighbors or peers due to personal stress? Because I feel like when you're in that high stimulation area, it's really easy to become focused and narrowed in and not think of how others can impact you or how that interaction can benefit you. And then the last couple of videos, Afrofuturism and then Latin American futurism, were really, really interesting. I decided to watch them because I didn't really know anything about these concepts. But the concept discussed in both these videos that had interested me was the possession of Western knowledge and kind of a Western mindset. But then the additional possession of a more individual experience, whether it was kind of segregation, systemic oppression in Afrofuturism, or they had noted indigenous or traditional knowledge in Latin American futurism. And so I kind of found it interesting how both of these kind of envision themselves in the future, due to this lack of representation, because it's primarily seen through white characters, but they also do this in their own way and kind of not through the way white or Western culture wants or envisions them to. So I thought that was definitely interesting.